I work just a few blocks from the hospital and can quickly get there by bike. They have a cozy cafeteria with reasonable prices, so I usually go there for lunch once a week. The food isn't anything extraordinary, but every now and then they have a decent selection. The staff recognizes me now and is always friendly. They don't care that I'm just there to eat, and it's much quieter than any local restaurant. I have autism and don't like loud noises, so these quiet lunches are a lifesaver for me. Recently, my sister found out I eat at the hospital cafeteria and gave me an earful, claiming those cafeterias are only for people who are at the hospital for a reason. I argued that I'm bringing them business. I'm not taking food from patients, and I only go once a week, so what's the problem? But she insisted I was wrong. Then she dragged our parents into it, and they sided with her. They said I should only eat at the hospital if I have a real reason to be there. I told them they were nuts. It's just food I'm paying for. Now, since none of us want to back down, I'm torn. I eat at the hospital cafeteria once a week, simply because it's close to work. Before we move to the update, I'd suggest sharing your opinion in the comments about the author's question. Personally, I don't think he's in the wrong because it's perfectly normal to eat at a hospital cafeteria. When I was at the maternity ward with my wife after a partner birth, I ate at the hospital cafeteria, and I don't see anything wrong with it. I noticed medical university students eating there too, and they weren't hospital patients. Sure, the food isn't top-notch, but it's cheap, and as the author said, you can eat there calmly, so I think it's fine. What do you think? Now let's move on to the update. Update 1. The situation got absolutely wild. I never could have imagined my sister would take things this far. I'm 23 and recently asked for advice because my parents and sister were upset with me for eating at the hospital cafeteria near my workplace. I like the peace and quiet there on the days I go, but things escalated so quickly that I still can't believe it blew up over something so trivial. My sister acted incredibly petty and completely out of line. When she found out I eat at the hospital cafeteria, she yelled at me saying that food is only for hospitalized patients. We had a huge fight, and I told her I'm not taking food from patients. As usual, she went crying to our parents, and, as expected, they took her side, agreeing that you shouldn't just go to a hospital cafeteria to eat. We argued for days. They kept hammering me, saying I was wrong and demanding I stop going there. So I posted about it online, and everyone in the comments said I wasn't doing anything wrong. Apparently, it's pretty common to eat at a hospital cafeteria just because you like it. I hoped things would calm down, but a few days later my sister called and asked if I'd stopped eating at the hospital. I said no, and it all started again. My parents called, furious, acting like I had to obey them just because they said so. I reminded them I don't live with them anymore. That's exactly why I moved out. They always take my sister's side. They grumbled, but this time, the fight didn't stay within the family. Other relatives found out because my sister decided to rally more support. She was so determined to force her will on me that she sought backup, but our parents were the only ones who sided with her. When I told my uncle what happened, he personally called them out over the phone. He said they always defend my sister because she's their favorite, and that they're terrible parents for allowing favoritism. Then my cousin went with me to eat at the cafeteria, and said he wants to start going there once a week too. He works nearby and rides a bike as well. We've already run into each other there during lunch, and he was pleasantly surprised that the food is much healthier than at other places. He's a bit picky about food, so this spot became a new lunch go-to for him. My sister got even angrier when she found out other family members were eating at the hospital cafeteria now. When everything came to light, my parents felt ashamed and backed off. They apologized to me, giving some nonsense excuse about how they genuinely thought eating at a hospital cafeteria was weird and felt they had to protect my sister. I told them they've been indulging her for so long that now it's all they do when she fights with someone. She acts condescending, controlling, and like a schoolyard bully toward me, even though she's older and they've been fueling it this whole time. But I'm not putting up with it anymore. In the end, my parents admitted they were wrong and apologized. They even made my sister apologize to me, and you could tell she hated it. She was practically gritting her teeth. Later, my parents invited me to dinner as another apology, but it felt more like a show for the family since they told everyone about it beforehand. The dinner was great, I won't lie. They made turkey, one of my favorite dishes. I love drumsticks with gravy. Yeah, I get a bit messy eating them, but I can't help it. My sister always found it funny, and it was one of the rare times I didn't mind her laughing at me, so I didn't think much of why she was giggling during dinner. Later, after the family dinner, I noticed my bike was missing. I had parked it in the backyard, out of sight from the living room window, but it was just gone. I panicked because it's my only mode of transportation. My parents got a bit worried too, but my sister acted oddly. She seemed smug and kept giggling. I immediately suspected her, but she played innocent, saying, "I can't believe you'd think I'd do something like that." I knew she could be incredibly petty, but this was a new low. I told her I'd go to the neighbors because they have a security camera that would have caught everything, and then I'd call the cops. Suddenly she got nervous. I was furious and said I knew it was her, and demanded she return my bike. She started crying, insisting she didn't do anything, and my parents immediately took her side, scolding me for daring to accuse her. I said I was done, went to the neighbors to check their camera footage, and planned to call the police. Then my sister called me, begging me to come back. The look on my parents' faces after defending her was priceless. She confessed she was furious that I made her apologize for something she still thought she was right about. So she planned for a couple of her friends to steal my bike during dinner. She said her friends were parked around the corner in a minivan with my bike. Then she insisted I couldn't call the police because I'm her older brother. My parents backed her up on that logic, but I pulled out my phone and headed for the door again. They chased after me, my sister crying and pleading for me to stop. I called her a spoiled brat and told my parents I couldn't believe they were still defending her after everything. Finally, they'd had enough and told her to immediately get her friends to return the bike. Sobbing, she called them, then ran to her room to talk privately. I couldn't hear anything, just whispering, and my parents looked deeply concerned. My sister would never have willingly admitted to having my bike stolen. She just kept sobbing, repeating that it was just a prank, and justifying it by saying it was a cheap bike. I bought it used a few months ago for $50, but it's in great condition, and my main way to get around. She kept glancing at my parents, hoping for support, but this time they couldn't cover for her. She slumped into a chair, hugging her knees, waiting with us for her friends. The longer it took, the more scared she looked. She kept texting them, even though she claimed they were just a couple of houses away. It took them nearly an hour to return the bike. When they finally pulled up in their minivan, the bike was soaked and covered in mud, like it had been dragged out of a ditch. They had tossed it in the trunk, sped off, and only came back when they realized they'd been caught. I said stolen because at the time I was almost certain my sister told them to get rid of it. If I hadn't mentioned the neighbors' cameras, I might never have gotten it back. When her friends arrived, their legs were muddy up to their knees. They begged me not to report the theft to the police. I started recording on my phone and asked if it was true that my sister told them to get rid of my bike, pointing out the neighbor's camera. They caved and admitted, yes, she wanted us to take it and dump it in a pond a few miles away. They had to go back for it when they realized they'd been exposed. The bike was nearly submerged in filthy water. Luckily, it had almost no accessories, just a detachable headlight and a water bottle, but the bottle was gone. I wasn't surprised to hear this from her friends. I made them tell my parents everything too. My parents laid into my sister so hard that she collapsed on the floor, sobbing and thrashing her arms and legs like a child. I hadn't seen her like that since she was actually little, and it unsettled me to realize she's still so immature inside. Then she locked herself in her room. Her friends were banned from our parents' house for good. My mom made her come out and apologize to me again, and my dad supervised as she cleaned and lubricated my bike from top to bottom, while I took apart the headlight to dry it. By the time she finished, it was dark outside. When she came back inside, she glared at me like I was the devil, but my parents shut her down immediately, saying they'd never been so ashamed of her. She went back to her room, crying again. I had a frank talk with my parents about her immaturity and how it's a result of their indulgence. I said I couldn't believe I had to be the voice of reason in the family, but the fact that she threw a tantrum on the floor like a kid shows she's still a child in her head because of them. They've always made me the scapegoat when she messes up, and now she has almost no sense of responsibility. For the first time, they didn't argue with me. Later, my dad quietly drove me and my bike back to my apartment in his SUV. He even gave me some cash to replace the missing water bottle. My sister and her crew used to hassle me a lot when we were kids. They'd gang up and tease me at every opportunity, but I usually ignored them because they were just boring to me. That seemed to annoy them even more. After the bike incident, I started getting a flood of messages from unknown numbers, trashing me for making my sister cry over a dumb prank. Knowing her, I'm sure she told everyone a completely different story. I sent detailed replies explaining what really happened, and even mentioned I have recordings of her friends confessing everything. Some students at her college found out the truth, maybe from my messages or because her friends spilled the beans. My sister was so humiliated that she came home in tears, having another meltdown. My sister complained that she and her friends were being called names like jerks and bike thieves at college. I didn't go to college myself, but I know students who rely on bikes treat them with care. Many are scraping by on a tight budget. She said someone even joked, "Don't park your bike near her, or it'll vanish." She was so crushed that she locked herself in her room for 3 days, throwing herself a pity party. My parents called me, trying to pin it all on me again. I reminded them of our recent talk that it's time to stop coddling her and let her face the consequences of her actions. If she flunks her classes again, it's because she's not trying hard enough. I told them they're just looking for someone to blame to make her feel better, but she caused this mess, not me. I'm done letting them make me the scapegoat. She's an adult, it's time she acts like one. They sounded defeated, apologized, and ended the call. It seems they really hoped I'd just take the blame to ease her burden, but I'm not doing that anymore. Now my parents act like nothing happened, and my sister and her crew avoid me like the plague, which suits me fine. I don't need more drama. But if something like this happens again, I won't let it slide. Update 2. First off, my bike is fine. I managed to prevent any rust after my sister had it thrown into a pond. It wasn't new to begin with, and there are no new creaks or noises. I was worried something would be off, but it's just a single-speed bike, and after lubrication, it runs great. I'd already lubed the bottom bracket bearings a couple of months ago, and I replaced the rear tire and tube myself, so I still ride it almost everywhere. Now, about my beloved sister. She barely passed her college exams, and tried multiple times to blame her bad grades on me and her depression from the bike incident. But even my parents stopped enabling her. They reached their limit. They made her stay in her room and study whenever she had tantrums or complained about life. They threatened to cut off her internet and phone if she didn't do her homework. She cried and said she hated them, but eventually pulled herself together and did what they said. She somehow graduated, but her graduation wasn't a joyful occasion. Our whole family went to congratulate her, but she was still miserable because she has no friends left. She hoped to celebrate with her old crew, but they ditched her long ago because she's unbearable. As punishment, my parents made her ride a bike. How ironic. She hated bikes even more than the bus. It was a used cruiser my dad bought her. They practically begged me to take her on weekend bike rides to get her out of the house. I only agreed because they asked politely and offered dinner. The last time we talked about it, she still stubbornly believed eating at the hospital cafeteria was wrong, but couldn't clearly explain why, no matter how much anyone asked. No one else was on her side anymore. Even my parents admitted they no longer think it's weird, especially after learning the cafeteria is a separate business, not part of the hospital. As a gesture to the family, they joined me for lunch there a couple of times, and made my sister come along. She sat there fidgeting loudly, saying she couldn't believe she was forced to eat there when it went against her beliefs. She said it like it was against her religion or something. She got scolded for it, cried as usual, and was told enough. It's time to grow up. I think she clings to her beliefs because letting them go would mean admitting she was wrong, and she's incapable of that. Sometimes I even wondered if she's not just spoiled and controlling but maybe narcissistic, though I'm no expert to diagnose. Her entire friend group turned on her because dealing with her caused them major problems. At least 2 of them were involved in the plan to steal and dump my bike, and when the truth came out they got heavily shamed. So the whole crew blamed my sister and cut her off to save their own reputations. I didn't press charges, but the 2 girls who stole the bike got in big trouble with their families. The minivan they used belonged to one of their parents, and after everything came to light, they banned her from driving it. Those parents even came to me personally to apologize for their daughter and asked for a copy of the video I recorded. I gave it to them. Despite being accomplices, the whole group pinned the blame on my sister and threw her under the bus. I think she finally learned what it's like to be the scapegoat. For a while, people even mocked her for being forced to ride a bike to college and back. My parents decided it was cheaper than the bus, and since she had no friends left to give her rides, it was her only option. No one stole or broke her bike. She just hated it. My dad also made her learn to fix and maintain it herself. He used to be into bikes when he was younger and still has all the tools. He knows enough to service our bikes himself, though he doesn't ride anymore. He taught me basic repairs too. For those wondering if my sister would do something even crazier or try to get revenge, nothing like that happened. She's just mad at me. She's been sent to therapy, and she seems slightly more reasonable, but any real change will take years, if it happens at all. At least she's stopped trying to boss me around. Since my last post, my parents have invited me over for dinner multiple times. My sister barely speaks to me at the table, and seems even more irritated that her attitude doesn't faze me. Everyone, including our parents, has told her she ruined her own reputation, but she can't stop blaming me because she needs someone to pin her problems on. Ever since she pulled that prank with my bike, I lock it up with a chain whenever I'm at my parents' house, just to be safe. After she graduated college, my parents suddenly announced she was moving out. She openly said she didn't want to, but they forced her to find a job and rent a place. They told her the party days were over, and it was time to learn what adult life is like. Many relatives had been telling them she'd never grow up unless she lived on her own and paid her own bills. Our parents hesitated for a long time because she was clearly their golden child, but they realized if they kept things as they were, she'd never mature. She was, of course, not thrilled. She was used to being a spoiled leech, but she couldn't blame me for this, since I had no part in the decision, and Sen knew it, though in college, she threw tantrums like, it was just a bike whenever things went wrong, and tried to pin it on me again. At one point, Mom just smacked her on the back of the head and told her to stop acting like I was to blame for all her grievances. She added that for me, it wasn't just a bike, it was essentially my livelihood since it's my main mode of transportation. Now my sister lives in a 2-bedroom apartment with 3 other girls. She had to move farther away so her reputation wouldn't follow her to her new job. Mom even cried when she moved out. My sister now works in an office, learning the basics of secretarial work, but she constantly complains about hating her life. At the same time, she tries to jab at me about how she'll live once she starts earning more. I just told her, live however you want, and she got mad that I didn't take the bait. She doesn't get along with her roommates and still rides that cruiser bike Dad bought her. Her job is only a few kilometers away, so she doesn't want to spend money on the bus, and walking takes too long. She demanded our parents buy her a car after they kicked her out, but they refused. She didn't speak to them for a while after that. Our weekend bike rides together are long over, since she moved out. Back when we still rode together, she'd try to needle me every chance she got. I don't even remember most of her jabs, because I just ignored her and didn't show any annoyance. She'd call me dumb or special, and roll her eyes. One of her constant childish taunts was, my bike's better than yours, it's got gears, but she could never outride me. Our rivalry might have even pushed her to get in better shape. It seems she desperately wants me to be the failure so she doesn't feel like one in comparison. She wants a car but can't afford one yet, since she's terrible at saving money. She asked our parents for an e-bike for Christmas, but they refused when they saw how much good ones cost. She's already cost them a fortune. They paid for all 3 years of her college. As a joke, I got her new bike tires for Christmas, and she shot me a death glare. In 2024, our parents bailed her out of financial trouble a few times because she was awful with money. Despite reality knocking her down repeatedly, she still acts like a spoiled brat in denial, yet somehow she's scraping by. Another thing she's mad at me about is that I live alone while she has to share an apartment with roommates. I met her roommates, and to her great disappointment, they actually seem to like me. I think she hates them because they don't cater to her like our parents did. She can't stand when people don't do what she wants, so living with roommates who ignore her whims must be torture for her. That's pretty much it for now. Unfortunately, there are no more updates from the author, so the story ends here. Share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think about all this? How would you handle being in the brother's shoes? The author's a champ for getting through to his parents, because honestly, I probably couldn't have done it. Thanks for watching this video to the end. Check out our previous video, which you'll see right here, and good luck.